And we're back.
Welcome back, everybody, to the only podcast on the internet that knows that Donald Trump has all the cards. Unfortunately, the game is Uno.
And we know that because we are doctors.
But not doctors.
On this episode, we will be discussing the impending, ongoing, I should say, election here in the UK, in England, Scotland, and Wales. We'll also be discussing an update on the Golders Green attack from last week. And Nigel Farage's £5 million donation.
After that, we're going to turn our attention towards the Strait of Hormuz, where we'll be joining the United States in its incredibly successful Project Freedom. It's not happening. It's not a thing. It's fine. It's fine, you guys. Don't worry about it.
Moving towards the United States, we'll be discussing the revamping of the Southern strategy and the elimination of minority-majority districts by the Supreme Court in many states in the South. And of course, we will end with some good news, all on Doctors Not Doctors, starting right now. Patrick.
Yes.
I lied.
You did?
Just now, because we're actually going to talk about one thing first. We're going to talk about the Hantavirus.
Ooh, it's all the time. You think everything's fine, it's smooth sailing, and then out of nowhere, Hantavirus.
Yeah. Out of nowhere, I was actually out of town, as you all know, last week. That's why I sound much different this week. But I saw I was in Portugal, and I was reading, and it said Cruzeiros, and in the back of my head, I'm like, where is Cruzeiros in Portugal? But Cruzeiros actually means cruise.
Yes.
People have gone on a cruise. They're cruisers. It took me 5 minutes, and I'm just like, because it said 2 Britons had died from the Hantavirus, and I'm like, where? Because I'm in Portland. I'm like, where is this in this country? I'm leaving today.
No. Yeah.
Oh no. And then I'm like, wait a second, cruisers. They're cruisers. Oh, never mind. So, and for those of you who are unaware, because a lot's been going on over the past week, basically there was a ship that was traveling from Argentina to. Do you remember where it's going?
Well, I don't know exactly what its ultimate destination was, but it was stopping off at the island of St. Helena, very famously, where Napoleon died.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
He was exiled there after he lost.
Yep. The literal middle of nowhere as far as, 1800s Europeans were concerned. But yeah, so this ship is heading over there, right? It's docking at St. Helena. Dozens of people get off. And unfortunately, it's after that the Hantavirus outbreak happens. And that's an issue. Hantavirus, for those of you who are, not experts on epidemiology.
And not that kind of doctor.
Yeah, exactly, right? And for the record, neither the hell are we. But
yeah, we're not those kind of doctors.
The absolute basics, as far as we understand them, are this. It is a virus that is spread through contact with aerosolized rodent waste. So if you're breathing in rat pee fumes, if there's mouse poop all over the place and just sort of like, making its way into respiratory tracts, this is the kind of thing that can cause you to get Hantavirus if the mice or rats in question have already been infected with it, right? So it's the kind of thing that apparently you find where humans and rats coexist, more likely to find it in rural areas, because of course, rats love grains and humans like to grow grains and store them. So it's a whole thing. It's not entirely surprising then that you would see an outbreak on a cruise ship where, of course, you've got large numbers of people in very tight confines and lots of food is stored up. So lots of opportunities then for rodents to sort of make their home and cause trouble.
Yeah, that's what they do. And the rodents have been a problem for humanity since, the beginning of time. The issue being, of course.
That's why we got cats, Chris.
That is why we have cats. Cats self-domesticated because they're smarter than us. But in reality, this is actually quite serious. There is no vaccine. There is no the treatment is just basically make them feel better if you get it. And because a lot
palliative.
of it feels like basically a flu, but then it can basically hit your respiratory tract or hit other parts of your body. And it's very serious, and people have died aboard this ship. And so basically, when they found it on the ship, they had to hold the ship off the coast of Cape Verde for several days. And basically, people on board did not know if they were going to be left there to die.
Well, it's horrifying, right? Because this is a disease that has a very high fatality rate. My understanding is that it's somewhere around 1 in 3 of people who get a strong case are expected to die of it, basically. And it is possible for human to human transmission to occur. It's just not very likely. And that's actually really fortunate.
Yeah.
Basically, if you're thinking about what happened with the COVID pandemic, there you had almost like a perfect storm of incredibly easy transmissibility
Yeah.
as it happened through, through airborne contact, as well as a very low fatality rate of about like 1 to 2%, right? And you might be thinking to yourself, well, I mean, shouldn't that be a good thing? And yeah, it is good. It is much better when people do not die. But if you've got a disease that kills people quickly, it makes it very hard for them to spread it. This is one of the reasons why you're never going to see like an Ebola pandemic, because
Knock on
Ebola
wood.
is, well, that's, well, no, I mean, because the opportunities for it to spread are incredibly limited. You have to be in very close contact with the bodily fluids of someone who is in the final stages of the disease, basically, in order to get it, and it attacks really quickly, right? So it's not it, that's not to say that it's not horrifying and can do horrific damage to small communities, and it does do horrific damage to small communities.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of thing where you're not going to see someone pick it up and then fly to another part of the world and then they spread it to, a whole new population there, simply because if you've got Ebola, you generally know that you got Ebola. It's not nice. COVID, on the other hand, yeah, lots of people had reduced symptoms, so they were able to carry it. They were able to spread it very easily. It was hard to know what the situation was, which is why the pandemic happened the way that it did. So if you're at home and you're sitting worried about, the hantavirus, yeah, this is not one of those things. It's really hard to spread. And the one downside here, the one thing that we do have to worry about is that apparently it's up to a 6-week dormancy period. So effectively, if you may have been in close, intimate physical contact with someone who has the virus, you would want to wait 6 weeks before you'd be able to say you definitely didn't get it or you definitely did.
Yeah, it takes a long time for it to incubate and takes a long time for it to come out, which is why,
Hmm.
there was a problem that they let people basically they discovered the strain of the hantavirus that these people
Mm.
had and and basically people were allowed to go home or go and be self isolate. I believe one person in the UK is self isolating as well,
Mm.
just like they had to do during
Right, during the COVID
during
pandemic.
COVID.
Yeah.
So, but they're still trying to track down a few people to make sure that they don't have it and that they are self-isolating. So,
Hmm.
I mean, basically in about a month and a half, we should come back and check and make sure everybody's been accounted for on that ship,
Yeah.
because it is dangerous. It is unfortunate that it's spreading or that it has spread.
Yeah.
But it is according to what we've read, it is very hard to just kind of accidentally get, like, you're not going to get it going to the pub. You get it
Right.
if you went to the pub and then you went home with somebody.
Right. Exactly. And so if you make it a habit of snogging people who are, visibly ill, maybe reconsider that particular,
No,
pastime.
reconsider
I'll just say
all
that.
your life choices. If you're looking at somebody sneezing and wheezing and you're just like, that's what I want, nom nom. You
Now,
don't want
Chris,
that.
We are not here to kink shame, but yeah, like, maybe hold back a little bit until
On
the
that one,
hantavirus thing
I'm
is
going to
taken
take
care
the
of.
hate. I'll take the hate of the sick kissers.
Okay. All
Um,
right. All
yeah,
right.
come at
Hmm.
me, but from a distance. I'll have a pointy stick. With that, let's talk about the ongoing election results here in the UK.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, basically, we are now in kind of local election results time. So
Hmm.
yesterday there were elections across the United Kingdom, well, across Great Britain, in
Yeah.
Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. I'm sorry, Wales, Scotland, and England.
Hmm.
And basically, there were elections for the devolved legislatures, which would be in Wales, that's the Senate, and in
Yep.
Scotland, it's Holyrood or the Scottish Parliament, and in
Hmm.
England, there were elections for some of the local authorities, like councils.
Exactly.
Think of
Not
it like
all of them, though.
not all of them. No, that's
Yeah.
not. It doesn't all happen at once. There are waves.
Hmm.
So basically, you have an on year and an off year, and even
Hmm.
within the councils that have elections, some of them only a portion of the council is reelected.
Mm.
These elections were a massive test for labor, and we've been talking about them for several weeks now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
everyone's been aware that they've been coming, basically, and I feel like if you're a member of the Labour Party thinking about these elections, I feel like, a general sense of either blind panic or total resignation was, probably the mood music that you're most likely to see.
Yeah, going into this election cycle, we know that Labor was not doing well. They were not polling
Mm,
high, and they're not polling high nationally, and they were not polling high in any of the places where they wanted to stand or did stand. And the
hmm
elections, and the results that we're seeing basically supports what the polls were saying.
hmm
Let's start in Wales. So,
All right.
Wales, which has been Labor since time immemorial, and that's not
Yeah.
really hyperbole. They've been Wales has voted Labour since the 1900s, and
Yeah.
in things we're in 2026 now. So for at least a century, if not over a century, Wales has voted Labour. And what
Yes.
like even
That
in the
that
last
is.
election
Hmm
in 2024, just kind of like everybody else, everybody turned to Labour to for change.
Right.
That has officially ended. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
They are now, I think, the third largest party, and you know, but they are well behind the two biggest parties in Wales now. And those two big parties are
Plaid
the Green.
Cymru
That's right.
and Reform.
Yeah.
Now, all throughout the last campaign. So I think first we need to talk about how the Welsh Senate
hmm
is constituted, because up until I think this election, I think they had a first past the post additional member system. I'm gonna have to check
hmm
up on that, but
Okay.
they've changed the entire system, so it doesn't matter what they had before. In this election, they've now gone full PR, full proportional representation. You know how much I love proportional representation. Um, so instead
It's
of
pretty much everyone who studies political science. I feel like at some point has to make a choice. Are you team PR or are you team FTPT? And I'm gonna put my cards on the table. I'm pro PR at this point. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
are you pro PR or are you wrong? So um, so basically, the there was new legislation passed in the last parliament that allows Wales to be split into 16 constituencies. Each constituency has 6 seats in it, I believe,
Okay.
and so basically, you no longer will have a singular member of the Welsh Senate who reports directly to you, or you can report directly to them. There will
hmm
be different parties, and you can go to whoever you want. They'll be in your region, and you can talk to whoever you need to talk to.
Right.
Um, so this means that instead of having like hyper local campaigns, you can now have a Welsh wide campaign. And
hmm
The Party of Wales, or Plaid Cymru, and the
hmm
Reform Party were neck and neck throughout the entire campaign. And it looked like, like the Plaid would be a little bit up here, then
hmm
Reform would be a little bit lower. And it's all the seats have now reported 96 out of 96 seats. And Plaid Cymru has 43 seats, and Reform
hmm
have 34 seats.
Yep.
So you need 49 seats for majority in the Welsh Senate. So cannot just govern on its own. It will need
hmm
either the Labour Party or the Conservatives or some combination of Labour, Conservatives, Greens, and Lib Dems to come forward, because Labour Party is in third with 9, Conservatives are in fourth with 7, the Green
hmm
Party is in fifth with 2 seats, and the Lib
Yep.
Dems are in sixth with 1 seat in the
Yep.
96-seat Senate.
One
So
lonely Welsh liberal.
one lonely Welsh liberal. It happens. There's one lonely Welsh Northern Irish person who is from Alliance, which is kind of the sister party
hmm
of the Lib Dems. So it does happen, but that one Welsh liberal might, be the make or break for elections. Now, this is why I like proportional
Yeah.
representation, because that isn't really a wasted vote. Your Lib Dem with their Lib Dem values, whatever it is, middle of the road Lib
hmm
Dem values or center right Lib Dem values,
Right.
whatever, you know,
They may be the deciding vote when it comes to assembling a necessary coalition for a bill to pass, or for a
exactly.
government to be formed.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
don't know how Plaid is going to arrange itself, but
Mm.
they will have the first minister. They will have the first minister of Wales, and that'll be the first time Plaid has had a first minister. They've been in coalition before with Labour,
hmm
when because Labour has never lost in the
Right.
Senate in Wales since 1999 or 1990. When they came up with the idea in 97, and then I think it was
hmm
implemented in 99. We're talking about 30 years, more or less 30 years of Labour rule has ended today.
Yep.
And
Yep.
people in Wales just don't know. I had conversations with Plaid people, during Brexit, who
hmm
were more obsessed with beating Labor, and I'm just like, guys, we got to talk about where food is coming from. They're just like, oh, but Labor, because they've never beaten them. Like Labor, just it's one of those things that people say around here is like, if you
Mm.
put a rosette or a pin a labor
Hmm.
pin on like a bale of hay and roll it down the street, it would get the most votes in that town.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's all gone. Those that dominance has ended, and proportional representation has helped because if it
Mm.
was back to first past the post, this would look a lot different, I think, because reform could do a highly targeted campaign and try and really
Hmm.
focus on where they needed that vote. But Ply did exceptionally well. It looks more European now as well, so that's what Ply looks like.
Yeah. I gotta say, it's probably the biggest story that's coming out of this. But the other, of course, big story is the rise of reform in terms of the number of counselors that it gained. At current counts, with 105 of 136 councils reporting, sorry, no, 115 of 136 councils reporting, just refreshed. Reform has picked up over 1,200 counselors. This is very interesting because Labor has lost 1,100
Yeah,
counselors.
yeah,
So, yeah, it would definitely seem basically that the reform gains have come almost entirely from Labor's losses. The Conservatives lost 473. So, obviously, we would expect their defectors to be more likely to have gone to reform. Um, the Independents lost 24. It's a drop in the bucket. The Greens and the Lib Dems both picked up about 400 counselors between them. So the implication here is like at the very least, the majority of labor losses here are reforms gains.
yeah,
And I suspect that if you are the right wing of the Labor Party, you're going to look at this result and you're going to see it as proof positive that labor needs to move farther to the right, that is, proof that the left is the problem. And you're going to have to sort of try to, get more voters back from reform by being more right wing about this. And maybe that is the case. That said, I really would like to know exactly sort of what is it that drives people away from labor towards reform? Um, because ideologically, there's not a huge amount of overlap there, generally speaking, or at least there wasn't
yeah.
until
Like
Shabana Mahmood got into the Home Office.
this
You
is
know,
this is a good question. Like, what is it about? Why are labor people who are ostensibly left wing shifting
mm,
to reform? And I think it's a couple of reasons. I think that there is a media environment that protects reform from a lot of people,
mm,
protects what they say, and make sure that people only hear what they think they want to hear. Like, like people want to vote reform because they think that taxation's wrong. Or they think that
hmm,
like reforms policies on like their economic policies, their fiscal policies are non-existent. I mean,
yeah,
they recently came out with concentration camps. We're going to build concentration camps in green areas. So if you vote reform,
hmm,
you won't build one of our concentration camps in your area. We will build
right,
it in green areas because we need to deport more people quickly. So we need to just start shoving people into jails, into open air jails.
yeah.
Um, and I think that there's a combination of kind of, sorry guys, latent racism.
Mm,
And there's also a combination of wanting to blame somebody for all of the problems, which reform is, they're classic at this. This is how
right.
reform, this is their bread and butter. This
I mean,
is,
this is how authoritarian populist parties work. The whole idea is to identify real problems that people face and then present them with solutions that are infeasible, impractical, deeply cruel, and really don't have a chance of working. Because the whole idea is that, for the most part, if you're voting for a populist party, you're most likely doing it, I suspect, to send a message, right? And not necessarily doing it on the basis of these are the people I want running things because I feel like
yeah,
they're going to be really good at doing it.
yeah,
Um,
there's a
yeah.
lot of that.
So, well, that's the thing. So, I think we're very likely to see because I mean now I think the conservatives or not the conservatives, reform have picked up I think like 8 councils that they now control that they didn't before. It should be interesting to see what they do with the power that they have there because, there's been a few councils taken over by reform where the first thing that they did once they got into power was to sort of start attacking each other because they realized, oh wait, our plans don't make any sense and none of this works actually. And it turns out there's not a ton of waste, fraud, and abuse that we could just get rid of to pay for all the things we want. Instead, we actually have to govern shock
Ye-
horror,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
mean, like in Kent, which is their like kind of flagship council, they said they
Right.
wouldn't raise taxes. They said that they
Hmm.
were going to find all this. They basically took the Trump playbook. They were going to come in
Hmm.
and do a Doge. We're going to come
Right.
and do a
Yeah.
Doge for
Perfect.
Kent, and we're going to
Hmm.
find all this waste. And they can't went in there and just like, there's not much waste. Let's go after all the DEI, and so let's start
Hmm.
firing people just because, and let's start doing a bunch of like showy things. But people are
Hmm.
like, yeah, but how are you at picking up garbage? How are you doing at the basics? And like that's the
Yeah.
problem with the populist party. You know, they are
They
not
don't
there
really
to
select for
govern.
that. Yeah.
No,
That,
it's
mm.
like Fox News hosts who become government officials.
Yeah.
Their
You know,
job
like,
isn't to govern. Their job is to create more content.
yeah, exactly. So, and it works out. It's worked out really well for the Trump administration with such incredibly, competent, safe pairs of hands as Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, listen, there's no downside, no notes. Everything's fine. So, I
mhm,
mean, there is something that I mean, I'll have to listen to it later because I've been watching returns all day on my phone and having them
mhm.
come in. But it does seem like a lot of people are falling back into the trap that Nigel's going to sort it. Um, it's the
Yeah,
Brexit trap that
just like Jim will fix it. That's right.
know.
I went there. I went
Yes,
there,
well,
people.
that's
Yeah.
fair, and like there is this big issue that how how is Nigel like Nigel has no real expertise in sort of kind of anything. Like who's going to
Mm,
be the chancellor of the exchequer in a reform government? No one's thinking about that. You're just thinking about the parades of brown people being shoved down your street and put into a wood chipper or
yeah.
into the back of some truck and sent off into the sea. And then all of a
Mm,
sudden all the jobs are going to come back and your wife's going to be hotter and the food's
mhm,
going to taste better and colors will be brighter. Like that's the kind of stuff they're promising. And when that doesn't
mm.
happen, it's like then you're kind of left with this unknown. How do you like what do you do now? And it doesn't matter because whatever actual plan they had, kind of like with
Right.
America, whatever actual plan there is, it never correlates with what they promised you. But
Yeah, no,
people just have
those are
to,
just things you say to gain power. I
those
mean,
are just
Donald
lies.
Trump said he's going to lower prices and stop all the wars, for example.
Yeah,
And, then the
yeah.
first thing he does is raise prices and go to war. So,
Yeah.
and go to war in a way that raises prices. So it's really, it's two for one there. So,
Yeah, I think we'd be remiss because
mm,
obviously Reform are the big winners tonight. They've gained over 1,000 new
mhm.
counselors. They haven't gained a lot of councils, but they have gained councils. Let me just pull
That's
this up.
that's the thing. Like they've gained a huge number of councillors. So the big winner when it comes to councillors being elected. But in terms of the number of councils that they've taken over, it's relatively limited. And that I think is interesting.
It's mostly because of the way the system works. It's like not every council is up for grabs. And
That's certainly
also,
true, right?
councils are of different sizes. So it takes
Mm,
a lot more than just having a very, very good night because you're still chipping away at thousands of labor councilors, which Reform
hmm.
did. Like we're talking thousands of labor councilors have lost their jobs today.
Yeah, that's true.
And so good luck to those guys. I mean that. But Labour is still
Yeah.
in control of 25 councils in England. They lost
Hmm.
27 councils in this election as in total control. So there's still
Hmm.
Labour councillors all over England. Reform have 13 councils.
Hmm.
Um, they control 13 councils now. The Lib Dems control 13 councils. The Conservatives have gained or they've lost 6 councils, so they have 8 councils. The Greens, when we should talk about the
Hmm.
Greens, they now are in. They have 3 councils,
Hmm.
and that's kind of, and then the rest of them, what they call no overall control.
Right.
But the Greens are kind of the other story of tonight.
Hmm.
Given like you would think that kind of the other half of the Labor dissolution really of their vote, or I
Yeah.
would say probably even a quarter, given how many it's that's lost, is to the Greens. And here in
Hmm.
London, they've taken 2 mayoralties.
That's true. That's true. Now the Lewisham, as well as what's the other one? I don't have it in front of me.
Hackney.
Hackney. Yeah. So both of them now have elected Green mayors, and this is the first time the Green Party has had any directly elected mayors at all. So this is sort of a big step forward for the Green Party, uh, in much the same way that Reform sort of has to deal with governing, having gained control of councils. This is now going to be the Greens' problem of saying, okay, you've given us your votes, you've given us your trust. We've said we're going to do things, and now we're going to have to sort of do them, right?
Yeah.
So it's one thing to be Zach Belansky, to be, charismatic and to sort of pick up a huge number of disillusioned left-wing labor supporters, right? It's going to be another thing to show that the Greens can actually govern. So that's going to be one, I think, of the larger silent news stories, basically, of the next year or two, basically, certainly until the next general election. I want to point out the BBC has put out what it says is the projected national share of votes for the parties on the basis of this the local elections here.
Oh, okay.
Do you mind if I share them with you?
Now, why don't you share me the link as well?
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, basically this is what happens because the whole point of the midterms, I keep on calling them midterms, but
Mm-hmm.
um, they keep on. You need to share me something else. That is not
Yep.
what you
No,
need to
that
share.
was not the thing I intended to share. And so,
But basically, this is a bellwether for how the government is going to do what's going to happen at the next election based off
hmm
of what's happened today. And obviously, it's just a snapshot, and things can change.
hmm
And I think it's also important before we talk about what the BBC says, in that I think that the Greens will have a much harder time in office as far as media scrutiny is concerned. As we
I
know, the right
suspect,
wing
yeah.
is often given very much a pass, and the Greens, who they may win Lewisham, they may win
hmm
Hackney, we'll see. But if they are in control of a couple councils, they have already won Norwich,
That's
in
right.
the east of England, I think.
hmm
I think that especially London councils, you're going to see a lot of attention to what the Greens are doing, and how they're governing, and is the rubbish picked up, and
hmm
all that, and how are schools looking, and all that, and a lot of attention put on their capacity to govern in a way that we really haven't seen with reform yet.
That's right. But so if I can share the sort of projected results, basically, the vote share is interesting here. The Reform are they're the biggest chunk. They are absolutely the party that is in first pole position here, with 26% of the projected vote share.
Right.
That's a big increase from last time. BBC is saying that's 24 percentage point jump. So that's,
Yeah.
that's big. That's quite big.
Yeah.
Second place are the Greens
Yeah. That's
with
right.
18%, up 5% from the last election. So that's big because one of the arguments has been that if you want to stop reform, you have to vote Labor because they're and this makes an awful lot of sense if you're thinking about not wanting to cast a vote that is spoiled. You're in a first past the post situation. You don't want to necessarily vote for the candidate that you most prefer if by doing so you end up allowing the person you least prefer to get elected. If you're an American and you're thinking back to sort of the 2000 presidential election, Bush versus Gore, where Ralph Nader ran, you know, I'm not going to say a strong third party campaign, but strong enough to more than account for Al Gore's loss in the electoral college. Like that's the kind of nightmare scenario basically that voters generally speaking want to avoid. However, if you're Labor, you need those people who are thinking, okay, I'm going to vote to make sure that the reform doesn't get elected, or I'm going to vote to make sure that the Tories lose power. If you're a left wing voter, you want to go with the crowd. You want to go with whichever alternative party is the biggest. And until recently, that has always been Labor. The problem that we're sort of seeing now for Labor is that now, if the Greens are actually edging ahead of them, that feeds into the narrative that Zach Belansky is very interested in putting forward, that they are not just an alternative to Labor, they are going to be taking Labor's place. That they are like this is the beginning of the transition where people effectively shift.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I don't know if that is in fact what is happening, but I do know that they are now on par with the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, and the Lib Dems. It's basically a four-way tie. The Greens at 18%, Conservative and Labour at 17, the Lib Dems at 16, and then there's Reform with a little over a quarter of the votes. And yeah, so it's interesting times, is what I will say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, on Sky News, they're saying that Labor would come if the
Mm-hmm.
election happened today. Labor would come in second, a distant second, and
Mm.
the Tories would be the third largest party with the Lib Dems at fourth place in the S&P, on
Hmm.
fifth place, and the Greens in like seventh place with 13 seats. So I think that
Hmm.
there's a lot of space for both, eventualities. I think that we could talk
Hmm.
about it a little bit later. As we should just warn you now, it's going to go a little bit longer this week because of the election and everything else.
Yeah,
But
it's a
um,
big thing. It's
it's
for people who are into political science. This is like, this is one of the high holy days.
yes. But before we talk about kind of the overall effect, let's talk about Scotland because
Yeah.
obviously I know I've been paying attention to that one the most. And I will declare that as I often do, that I work for the S&P
Hmm.
Westminster Group, and everything I say is my own. But obviously, I've been paying attention as I know some of the people who won and lost their seats today. And yes,
Mm.
there were some losses. So um, the count in Scotland isn't done yet. And so, just to explain to people that in Scotland, there's two ways to be elected. You can either be elected to Holyrood on the first past the post system, or what they call the additional member system. There are
Hmm.
73 seats that are first past the post, and there are 56 seats that are broken down into different constituency areas, districts, regions, they're called regions.
Hmm.
Um, and those 73 plus 56 is 129, and you need
Hmm.
65 seats to have a majority. The entire system was designed to ensure that no one party could get a majority, or
Mm.
else when the system was designed back in the 1990s, Labor was dominant. Labor would have had that majority easy, and they would have held on to it just like they held on to it in Wales for just forever and ever and ever and ever ever. Um,
Until today.
well, long before. See, it's the exact reverse here. So the S&P basically won their first minority government in 2007.
Hmm.
And since then, the S&P have been in government since then. So this is like,
Yeah.
you know, statistically very difficult to maintain.
Yeah.
Um, and yet today, it is more than likely that the S&P will get between 60 and 63 seats, if not well, hopefully, I'm hoping for two more than that. Um, but I don't know if the math or the system will work out for that. Currently, as of now, got the
Hmm.
wrong tab up. As of now, it looks like the S&P have 55 seats, which is down five from the last election. The
Hmm.
Conservative Party have 9 seats. Labor have 8 seats. The Lib Dems have 7 seats. The Scottish Green Party have 7 seats. I think that we're starting to get some AMS seats now, and Reform have
Okay.
5. So
Right.
time to start explaining what's happening. So before that number was much lower. The Reform had no seats the last time I checked this, and that's because after the first past the post seats have been in that area have been won, then
Hmm.
another basically a mathematical formula, a math formula gets taken out, and basically if you've gotten enough a high enough percentage of the vote plus what happened with your how many seats you've already won, you can start winning seats, what they call on the list.
Hmm.
And that's how Reform and the Greens and Lib Dems and Labor and the Tories are all going to kind of catch up to the S&P. S&P. And the
Hmm.
S&P will get some, but because we won so many in under first past the post, we're not going to
Hmm.
get nearly as many as everybody else. We will still likely be the largest. We will be the largest
Mm.
party, but it depends on the size of that victory. So again, this is like I say, statistically, this is huge. For the past since 2007, and it's now 2000. So what's that? 20 years?
I mean, I'm not. My math is not the strongest at the moment, but
I think yeah, 2007, and next year it'll be
yeah,
2027. So yeah, that's 20 years, 19 years
it's
now.
coming close. So yeah.
19 years ago, the S&P came in office, and they're still there
Hmm.
through thick and thin. And the people of Scotland have said, yes, I'd like to maintain that. It's it is not without its there were some sad points today. The one of the former ministers in Scotland, Angus Robertson, lost his seat. That's how the
Mm.
Greens got their first seat. They got their second seat off of another as SNP MSP as well, or former
Hmm.
MSP. Um, and across Scotland, we also lost a seat in the Western Isles, Nahili Nier, which I used to work for the MP
Right.
for for that island. So I actually know the person. I know all three people who lost their seats today, and they're all hardworking MSPs and
Hmm.
hardworking and Angus Robertson, who was one of them. He was a hardworking MP as well. So this is the way politics works, though. There's no prizes for second place in theory. Um,
That is true. That is a true
which
fact.
is, that's just that is the way that it goes.
Hmm.
But it's been an interesting election. A lot of people are hoping that the S&P got a lot less than 50. That's not going to happen.
Hmm.
They're hoping that, basically if the number was small enough, then maybe the unionist parties could cobble together some kind of coalition to keep the S&P out of government. We'll have to see just how where the S&P finishes and where
Mm.
everybody else finishes. But if we're talking about 60 seats, and the Scottish Greens are already on seven, that's ball game. Because
Well,
what
okay.
what basically what happens and what's happened in the past is that the S&P usually governs as a minority government, and
Hmm.
then when they need things like the budget, then they'll go to each party and say, "What do you want in the budget?" And then we can all vote for it
Hmm.
together. And that's why I prefer PR, because you don't shove something down someone's throat. You just say, "All right, let's figure out how we're going to achieve this together," because that's the way that's going to work. And
Right.
if we
There's got to
don't,
be a certain amount of give and take. There's a lot less in the way of, just sort of dirigism, if I can use the phrase.
yeah, yeah. And I think the big story outside of the S&P will be who comes in second.
Mm.
And the polls had reform coming in second. Will it happen like that? Maybe. But we're talking about distant second places here.
Mm.
Even then, you're still talking about this populist party that their only job was to disrupt. I don't believe they believe in devolution at all.
Mm.
So they're going to have. It'll be interesting to see how they treat Holyrood, as opposed to as opposed to how they treat Westminster. Because
Right.
just a small anecdote, uh, Nigel Farage in Westminster
Mm.
doesn't treat Westminster the same way that the Tories do or Labour do. He
Mm.
knows that he's stuck in the back seats for now. He knows that he is
Hmm.
like his ability to shake the system up or to basically get his face on television is really, really restricted. And also,
Hmm.
most importantly, people can talk back to him in the House of Commons. So he is
Oof.
very rarely there and doing speeches and, basically
Hmm.
exposing himself for what he is. If you listen to him, he's often talking in press conferences. He's often outside of the House where people
Hmm.
can't check what he does.
Yeah.
Um,
Why would you ever speak in a place where someone can talk back to you if you're Nigel Farage? How could that possibly benefit you? You know?
Exactly. There's no benefit to him for doing that. So
Yeah.
in the Scottish Parliament, where um, in the Scottish Parliament, sorry, there's a note coming in. I'll put my phone on silent. Um,
Curse your technology.
well, it is election season, so notes are going to come in. But seeing how he's going to act in the Scottish Parliament, because it isn't Westminster, it isn't to scream and yell and act a fool, which is
Hmm.
basically a House of Commons. Um, it is much more difficult. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. It'll be interesting to see how we make the next term work. And also if you do have a pro independence majority, which is looking like that's the case,
Hmm.
then you're starting to talk about a referendum or asking for a referendum in the next few years.
Right.
Um, because there is this perception that the S&P, like said, that only an S&P majority will allow a referendum, but in reality,
Mm.
it's more like conventionally an S&P majority is the only time that we've had a referendum, so it'll be good if we got one. But we have
Mm.
other parties in Westminster, I'm sorry, in Holyrood, who will ultimately ask for it as well. So
Mm.
you're talking about the parties that have the majority in Holyrood, and you're going to basically tell them to fuck off. You're going to have
Mm.
a legitimacy crisis if Westminster consistently ignores. This is one of the benefits, or sorry, not benefits, but one of the issues about not having a constitution is that
Mm.
because there's no constitution, well, whatever you want to happen on that day is what happens. So in 2011, there was an independence referendum because David
Hmm.
Cameron, thought we would get destroyed. He thought, be 20% and the S&P would be
Mm.
dissolved as a party. That did not work. That wasn't the case. Got the largest
Mm.
amount of vote after we lost. And
That's
so,
true.
so,
Th-
yeah, we're in a
mm.
different place now. So we'll have to see what the result is and, the interaction between Westminster and Holyrood.
I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be interesting because, like, on the one hand, you could certainly argue that the S&P, are certainly by far the largest party here. There's no question about
That's
it,
just
right?
math.
Yeah, exactly. At the same time, though, it didn't get a majority. And the system is obviously, that's the thing with, like, the more proportional the system is, the less it relies on first past the post, the more parties you would expect to see. And therefore, the greater the difficulty of any one party gaining a majority in the first place, right?
Yeah.
It would be, I would suspect that if you're going to argue against allowing for a referendum, the tack to take would be to say, but you didn't get a majority. So therefore, why should you get a referendum? Which I suspect would be, to a certain degree, using the political system and its more proportional nature against the SNP in that sense. But ultimately, like, it literally just comes down to what is it that the people of Scotland wants, you know? And I think you're right that if there's a clear groundswell of support for referendum, uh, and Westminster decides not to allow one, you're right. One of the downsides, so to speak, of having no written constitution is that you're right. Anything can sort of happen as long as people see it as legitimate. But one of the upsides of it is also that it means that if something is being denied, you can't just sort of say, oh, well, the Constitution says no, and therefore we all just have to accept it and move on. Instead, it can be a situation of, well, you're saying no, but there's no constitution to say it's impossible. So what's up with that? You know,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it cuts both ways in that sense, the lack of a written constitution.
Yeah, it does. And so we'll have to see how well the Scottish Parliament deals with it, the SNP deals with it, the Greens, who also support independence, deal with it. And
Yeah.
as we speak, there's yet another seat that the SNP have won. I'm pretty sure must be through the list. So now it's
All right.
56 seats. So we keep on
Mm-hmm.
slowly climbing up, little by little by little by little. Because even the people who
Mm-hmm.
lost their seats today, who didn't win by
Mm-hmm.
first past the post, they are, if they're on the list,
Mm-hmm.
they can come back and via their regional list. So I
Well.
think overall, I think
Mm-hmm.
to kind of close out this election special section, um, I think that the Greens will be underplayed massively
Mm-hmm.
until the next election. And, basically, I think that the system will try to save one of the two big parties. Right now, it looks like it's Labor who's being trying to be saved by kind of this national equivalent vote.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm seeing the Greens in Scotland coming in second. I'm seeing them, they've won
Mm-hmm.
in three first past the post seats. Down here, you're talking about, Hackney, Lewisham,
Mm-hmm.
and we won't be able to see the full results for some time. But coming in second is a big deal, especially in a local election, because you're seeing who has the momentum in your area, and it
Mm.
clearly isn't with Labor, and it
Yeah.
clearly isn't really with the Conservatives. The Conservatives took a council; they took Westminster Council,
Mm.
which is not nothing,
Yeah.
given the situation that the Conservative Party is in. But I mean, you could be looking at the Conservatives like we look at the Lib Dems now. A party
Basically,
that
yeah.
gets
I, I,
40
I think
seats.
reform has basically sort of officially eaten the conservatives' lunch. I don't see them coming back as like the major opposition, at least anytime in the near future. It's worth mentioning that one of the interesting facts about this local election appears to be that there's two simultaneous and yet somewhat at odds narratives that appear to be in play. Number one, this is a massive loss for Labour. Number
Yeah,
two, it's not as big a loss as everyone thought it was going to be. And
yeah,
that means that perversely, Keir Starmer lives to fight another day.
yeah. We haven't really even talked about Keir Starmer and his survivability, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's. Oh, sorry. It looks like Reform took
Yeah.
two more councils.
Oh,
So,
wow. Okay.
but what we're talking, I think that we should take a moment to discuss. Like
Mhm.
the Reform victory seems obviously they've won the most counselors in this particular round, but
Mhm.
their share of the vote probably is not going to be as high as it was in 2024 or when they in other previous elections because as we will discuss in a few minutes,
Mhm.
the Reform parties had some of the shine taken off of it. Their even their high watermark may have been met, and we're talking about getting a quarter of the vote as opposed to a third,
Mm.
and that is the difference between having a lot of MPs and being the unchecked government.
Right.
And and Keir Starmer, it doesn't seem like anybody. I mean, no one's actively calling for him to go today, but it still is Friday. By Monday
Mm.
morning, we'll see where he's at. But again, there's nobody to take him. So, here's a fun
Yeah.
fact: Angela
Yeah.
Rayner,
Hmm.
on my social media feeds for
Yeah.
whatever reason, unprompted, paid ads from her on my social media feed.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting. All right.
it's jokes because she just like, I'm Angela Rayner. I believe in these things. I'm like, what?
Mhm.
Why are you pitching it to me? Like, like I don't have a vote in the labor leadership contest. Why are you pitching?
I feel like perhaps that ad buy was not as well targeted as it could have been.
I
Is one way to
Yeah,
put that. Yeah, I like the labor's fundamental problem is that there's no one who's clearly in a position to sort of take over, right? And I suspect there's one of the one of the difficult things I think for the Green Party is going to be that a lot of the votes that they got are going to be people who are disappointed and disaffected with Labor right now. But that doesn't mean people who are necessarily abandoning the party and will never vote for them again. I suspect that Labor has an opportunity to try to rebuild its coalition before the next general election. It's not going to be a coalition, I suspect, that will get anywhere near the level of parliamentary seats that it has right now, because it
yeah,
got a massive supermajority on the basis of a little over a third of the vote last time.
yeah,
But it would certainly seem that there should be a possibility for Labor to, figure out how the hell to right the ship and then start writing it immediately. But if they can't, I think that's basically that's what the Greens are sort of betting on, really. But it is clear
yeah,
that the current way that the government's been running itself, it does not appear to have put forward a strong narrative to the British people. It does not appear to have a theory of why they're in there in the first place, what it is that they're doing, how they're going to do it. They haven't mobilized the country to solve any of the country's problems. And so I think the scandals with Peter Mandelson, the scandals with Morgan McSweeney and all that. Like, I think that's ultimately less of a problem for the government than the fact that they don't seem to be doing things, you know,
yeah.
like the things that they have done, and they have done some things, and some things they've done have been quite good, actually. But you don't hear about them, they
No,
don't talk about them, and
no.
there's no framework to put it into. So it's a fundamental failure of the basics of politics. And either Keir Starmer figures out how to rectify that immediately, or I think the Labour Party is basically kind of screwed, really.
Yeah, no, I agree that. I mean, I think that the death knell has already been rung. I think that it's just a matter of how they reconstitute themselves because their coalition has
Mm,
collapsed, and now you just have like this core labor vote trying to figure out what's going to happen. They have some
yeah,
time to figure themselves out, but it's not an enormous amount of time. And if you go through a leadership contest and you have this big massive infighting, you're just gonna it's a waste of time. But
yeah,
who knows? I mean, it's going to be a party in chaos for the next until the summer and maybe until the end of the year.
yeah.
Let's take a break, and
Hmm.
then we're going to come back with a regular show. Um, and we'll try to get to that part quicker because we've already been on air for a while. But as we said, these
Hmm.
elections, they are like Wales is seismic.
Right.
The SNP being the largest party, as far at the time of recording,
Hmm.
is also historic. Reform doing really well, is
Hmm.
it is an important thing to note, despite the fear that would grow in people, but also noting that it's not as big as it was just 18 months ago.
Yeah.
So with that, let's take a break and we will be right back. And we're back.
And we're not yet done with Britain.
That's right. We just
Yeah.
wanted to update you on a couple of things that specifically because we talked about it last week. So there was an attack in Golders Green, which we talked about while I was out of town.
That's right.
Two people were stabbed in
Hmm.
Golders Green, and the entire British media apparatus was talking about it. And it turns out afterwards that we got our information wrong because there was a missing portion to the reports, almost all
That's true.
reports.
Yeah.
It turns out the third person was attacked first,
Hmm.
whose name was Ismail Hussein,
Hmm.
who seems to have been friends with the attacker,
Hmm.
went into his house in the morning, tried to get into his house, was let in, and then attacked by the attacker first.
Right.
So it was three people attacked, not two. So I think that's an important distinction to make. It doesn't make it
Hmm.
not an anti-Semitic attack,
Exactly. Right.
but it is important to note that this person seemingly who has a history of mental illness and
Hmm.
violence started with one of his friends, and
Yeah,
then apparently ran towards the community.
that's the thing. And I think that raises sort of two obvious possibilities here. On the one hand, this is potentially a situation where you have a very sick individual who is committed to engaging in violence for violence's sake. His
Yeah,
friend tries to stop him and then, ends up getting stabbed for it. Alternatively, a sick and violent individual who really wants to commit an anti-Semitic attack, and his friend tries to stop him, or at least tries to talk to him and get stabbed for his trouble, and then two other people are stabbed on the street. But like this is it's nasty, especially because this comes in the context of a large number of anti-Semitic attacks that have been happening. So there's been the attack on the ambulances. There was a firebombing of a synagogue. There's been a large number of attacks, and it does appear that there is a bit of an investigation into whether the Iranian state is linked to some of these attacks.
yeah,
And I say this not just because the police are saying that they're looking into this as a possibility, but also because apparently there is a group that has claimed responsibility for some of these attacks. Its name is Harakat al-Shab al-Yamin al-Islamiyah, which can be translated apparently as the Islamic Movement of the People of the Right Hand, who are a pro-Iranian Islamist group. So it would be, well, I'll just say this. It would be an indication of the ripples of Trump's decision to attack Iran, sort of a real indication of just how global this conflict is in a way. You know, um, if the Iranian state and or its proxies and or groups that ally themselves with the Iranian regime are using this as an opportunity to, destabilize democratic countries by having attacks against Jewish people, basically.
yeah.
Um, I have no great insight into this. I simply pointed out as being like, if that's what this is, good Lord, that's not great. It's not
Well,
great, Bob.
that's what not great, Bob. That's what
No.
happens when you attack one of the world's biggest sponsors of terrorism.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is a possibility, and we don't know if there's a direct link or not. We just know people have tried to claim
Exactly.
tried to claim responsibility for it. Another
Hmm.
thing, though, that we really just wanted to talk about really quickly was the political backlash from the
Hmm.
past couple of weeks. There's been a very large conversation in the UK about anti-Semitism and how people and the government are supposed to respond to it. But
Hmm.
there's been an issue, and as I said last week, these pro-Palestinian marches are going to be kind of the target of
Hmm.
people, usually on the right, who say that these marches are incredibly inherently violent and inherently anti-Semitic.
Hmm.
And so there's been a call this week from kind of a lot of politicians down here in London and in the UK and in the UK government to
Hmm.
figure out ways to ban them,
Yeah.
to ban where they walk or to ban them completely. I think the Conservative Party is more on the ban completely, and Labour is more on the ban where they walk. Either way,
Hmm.
it has been pointed out though to people who've been making these distinctions to say that we need to stop these protests, these
Hmm.
pro-Palestinian protests, that they have no intention or desire or have called for the end of the Tommy Robinson far right white protests, basically.
Right. And in
Um,
in fact, Kemi Badenoch has been very clear that she sees Tommy Robinson and sort of right-wing and anti-immigrant protesters as being a completely different thing
totally different.
to people protesting, against genocide against Palestinians.
Yeah.
So, and I agree actually that those are very different things, but just I draw it the opposite conclusion, quite frankly, than Kemi Badenoch does. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll put it that way.
yeah, it is surprise. It's not surprising because that is what kind of gets under my skin about the highly political nature of this
Hmm.
conversation. You can't have a real conversation about anything that anybody wants to talk about in these particular areas because we're just supposed to sit back and watch Timer Robinson, march
Hmm.
hundreds, like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people down in central London, get Elon
Hmm.
Musk on television on a big screen and saying, "You've got to overthrow your government," and the one
Hmm.
world's richest man telling,
Yeah.
like, basically inciting all these people to, your government doesn't work for you. You got to overthrow them. If if
Hmm.
where have you heard this before? If you don't fight for your country, you're gonna lose it.
Yeah, exactly,
Um,
right.
and people not batting an eye, Labor Party, Conservative Party, not
Mhm.
batting an eye, just saying, oh, the boys will be boys, boys will be
Freedom of
boys,
speech, obviously,
freedom
and
of
whatnot.
speech.
And so, yeah, yep, yep,
Pro-Palestinian
yep.
marches, we got to shut them down. They're inherently dangerous. We have to
Well,
kick these people
they
off
had
the
a
streets.
kafaya, Chris, don't you know? So,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
having a kafia
Hmm.
is tantamount. Some people want to get those banned as well. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, come on, guys, like it's
Well, that's
obvious what you're doing.
well, this is the thing. I have exactly as much respect for people who conflate support for the Palestinian people with support for Hamas, as I do for people who conflate being Jewish with being in favor of the Israeli government,
Well, the
which is to
Netanyahu
say,
government, yeah,
yeah, exactly, no respect at all. Like that, anyone who makes claims like that is betraying either ignorance or absolute prejudice. And I'm sorry, but like anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Palestinianism, like none of this. Attacking groups of people for the actions of states or for the actions of individuals, I think is indefensible.
yeah,
And if you are going to have a pro-Palestinian march, if there are people in the march who are, you know, actually calling for violence against innocent people, if you had people at any protest calling for violence, that's already a problem.
yeah,
That's already clearly against the law because that's incitement to violence, right?
yeah, yeah,
So the idea that you need to go farther and say, okay, but anybody having a Palestinian flag therefore is calling for violence.
yeah,
No, clearly not. That's absurd. Stop being a dick.
yeah.
Yeah.
And with that, let's move
Hmm.
on to the last bit of the UK section, and this one is a doozy.
Hmm.
I'll start it like this. A couple of years ago, about 18 months ago, Keir Starmer, Labour Party ministers were
Hmm.
lambasted in the British press for having received some gifts, some whether
Hmm.
they be tickets to sporting events or a fancy pair of glasses. I think Keir
Hmm.
Starmer got a very expensive pair of glasses or glass
Hmm.
frames. That became a very, very big political story in the UK just after
Hmm.
the election of the Labour government. It was kind of the first domino to fall. They didn't even get a honeymoon period. It
Right.
was, Keir Starmer's just like everybody else who's corrupt. He took, these glasses were 2,000 pounds, I believe, or something, some
Hmm.
thousands of pounds. And, I think there were free tickets to Taylor Swift or something like that.
Hmm.
And, this is outrageous. How dare these ministers benefit from
Yeah.
their position?
Mm.
It emerged last week
Yeah.
that Nigel Farage
Hmm.
had taken a donation of £5 million in early 2024 before he declared that he was going to run for office from a donor called Christopher Harborn, who lives
Hmm.
in Thailand,
Ooh,
um, and has
that
like
sounds
apparently a
perfectly
Thai
normal.
name and is
Hmm.
deep, deep, deep into cryptocurrency. And not too long after Harborn gave that gift to Farage,
Hmm.
Farage decided to stand and decided to become an advocate for cryptocurrency.
Now
And
that's a hell of a coincidence, Chris. That's
I'll put one more to you. I'll put
yeah.
one more to you.
All right, go on then.
It's 2026, and the story
Hmm.
came out in The Guardian last week, or this week or
Yep.
last week.
All
So
right.
that means that whilst the world was losing its collective mind over tickets and glasses to the Labour
Hmm.
Party, I'm not entirely
Hmm.
sure if we did or not. I should probably go back and check. It doesn't sound like me, but I need to check. The world was effectively ignoring or not paying attention to the fact that potentially one of the most powerful men and clearly one of the most
Hmm.
popular leaders in the UK was just handed what LBC was able to determine as like a 12th of all UK political donations that year. He received
Wow.
he received like a 12th of that, if not more.
Now, see that you might think, Chris, right, that that would be incredible evidence of like corruption of someone just buying political support from Nigel Farage, that Nigel Farage has no principles and will clearly say anything for money, in the sense that you can literally give him money and he'll say things on his app. Uh, you
Huh.
know, someone paid him to say up the raw at one point, I think.
You might
So
think
that's
that, but I couldn't possibly comment.
right, exactly. But the thing is, Chris, you're overlooking a really important fact of the story, which is
True.
that, he didn't report it.
I
Didn't,
did
yeah,
overlook that.
yeah.
He didn't
Hmm.
report it because he wasn't an MP.
Ah, I see.
He
Yeah,
wasn't
right,
standing and he wasn't underneath
right.
any political
Exactly.
laws because he was
So there's,
just a guy.
yeah. Well, I mean, he had, it's not like he had any reason to report this massive donation because, God knows it's not the people's business knowing who gives him money to say what things and all that kind of business. Because all that money I know okay. So admittedly, the crypto billionaire is a donor to reform.
Sure,
Yes, yes, yes.
sure,
And you might think
sure.
that this is therefore a political donation, but no, it's all perfectly
No.
above board. It was
Yeah.
for private security for the rest of Nigel Farage's life.
Which just makes sense.
Right,
You know,
because yeah,
but
and he pointed out he is the most physically attacked politician in modern Britain.
well,
You
yeah.
know, more than the politicians who literally got murdered.
Yeah,
Because,
except for the ones that were
yeah.
murdered.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's what he said, and basically he was able to ride that train for a year and a half, but now people are starting to ask him about it. And again,
Hmm.
like I was saying before, he doesn't do confrontation well. He does,
Yeah.
the stump speech. He does they're coming they're coming over the water and they're taking your things. He does that, but
Hmm.
if somebody says who, where, and when,
Hmm.
and he just, he crumbles away, just kind of
Yeah.
like Alex Jones, brother. So this is just an interesting thing that uh,
Hmm.
apparently some people believe that he should have reported this
Hmm.
because it was 12 months before he got the money, 12 months before he became an MP.
Hmm.
Therefore, he should have declared it. Now, uh,
Hmm.
if this is the case, and I'm sure somebody will be looking into this, he could get reported to standards for
Yeah.
not reporting this. Now, the biggest risk is that he would be excluded from the House for a while, but I doubt that's going to happen. But I don't think this is the end of this. And when we get back, it'll be interesting. But of course, if somebody does report him to standards, and the House decides to send him to standards or the
Hmm.
or something of that nature, the spin from reform and the right wing papers will be the deep state's coming after Nigel after he received his minor, small £5 million donation. You all understand what
Well,
it's like when
it
somebody
wasn't a
gives you five
donation.
million pounds for no reason.
It was just a gift. It was just a gift, Chris. A pure gift of a guy who just wanted to see Nigel safe.
Yeah.
Um, I
Um,
will mention this one last thing, just
okay. Yeah.
as a legal matter, right? Um, the British law has thought a lot about how gifts work.
Yeah.
And the thing is, basically, under law isn't really interested in recognizing gifts as gifts unless there's a damn good reason to. In other words, if someone gives a bunch of money to their child, then the law is willing to say, okay, that's probably a gift. If you give £5 million to Nigel Farage, I think if you were to ask a judge or a lawyer about it, the lawyer would be like, yeah, the court might not consider that to be obviously a gift, actually. Like you'd probably want some real evidence that this was not in exchange for anything, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think this is going to be as nice of an open and shut case for Nigel Farage as perhaps you might like. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. We're
Mhm.
gonna crack on. No break. We're just gonna go straight into the next
We're
section.
raw dogging this part. It's
I don't.
great,
I
you
don't like
guys.
that analogy. Um, well,
What,
let's just.
you never been on a transatlantic flight without using any of the onboard entertainment? Because that's what raw dogging means.
Oh,
Yeah, I know it
yeah.
sounds incredibly filthy, but apparently the kids are using it to mean just like not going onto the internet for a while.
All the youth.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about what's going on in Iran because obviously, listen, guys, everything's fine. Punch is
Hmm.
served.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
at war.
Yep.
The
Definitely not a
blockade
war.
is definitely working.
Hmm.
As far as I can tell here, I'm just checking my notes. I have here escorts, not escorts.
Yes, that's true. That is, in fact, exactly what happened. So a few days ago, Donald Trump took to the internet to announce, because that's how government is done on Twitter,
No, no,
Uh,
Truth Social,
Truth
his
Social. He truthed
personal
it. He
social,
truthed it.
his personal
You're right.
social
I'm so
media
sorry. I'm so
fucking
sorry. Because
apparatus.
exactly like you do. So he put out onto Truth Social that he was going to be instituting Project Freedom, which
Oh
is,
God, I can
oh,
hear
it's
the
great.
eagle.
Exactly. Yeah. If I could do an eagle screech, I would so do an eagle screech
If
right
we can
now.
find one, I'll put it in the pod right now.
Oh my God, do it, Chris, do it. That'd be awesome. Um, but yeah, so basically, Project Freedom. Project Freedom was going to be using U.S. Navy ships basically to escort tankers through the Strait of Hormuz in order to, reopen the straits through force. And they started doing this, and three whole ships got through, Chris.
Three whole
Three
ships
ships,
got through.
three whole ships. Now, normally 120 ships get through the Strait of Hormuz each day, so this actually isn't helpful. Also, one South Korean tanker did get hit by the Iranians, who, of course, were not at all okay with the idea of strips going through the strait on account of they have declared it closed and said that no one
Mm.
can get through without them agreeing to it. And also, the U.S. has said that any ship that does agree to pay the Iranians the money that they demand to let anyone go through will get seized. And America has opened fire on, I think, two Iranian ships recently for having tried to get through the blockade. So it's all fun. It's really great. I'm just going to say this about Project Freedom.
All right.
Number one, it's called Project Freedom, not Operation Freedom.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, and there's a really important reason for that, right?
I'm
Because
sure.
yeah. So the thing is, under the War Powers Act, when the United States is presented with an imminent threat, the president can deploy military forces for up to 60 days. And at that point, he has to go before Congress, and Congress has to say, okay, you can continue the armed struggle. We give you, armed premature. We're the ones who declare war, not the president. This is the Constitution 101. And if Congress does not give its active assent,
Yeah.
then the US has to pull its forces, right?
Right.
Now, the incredibly weak and corrupt American Congress run by the Republican Party has not voted to, allow military operations to go forward, basically. And you might think that that's a little bit interesting. And I would say that it very, very much is, because this war is deeply unpopular. Having all the Republicans give it their approval when it is driving up oil prices and causing chaos throughout the entire world. I think there's a damn good reason why the Republicans want no opportunity to put their fingerprints on this thing. But that still leaves the problem of, okay, but we got all the ships there and they're doing a blockade, which is an act of war, right? So, like, what the hell is going on? Well, their reasoning is that because the major combat operations have ended, that
Yeah.
therefore the period for which the War Powers Act, that 60 days, that's done. It restarts. It restarts altogether,
Okay.
right?
All right.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
now it's the negotiation phase. So the conflict is over. There is no military operation, so there can't be an operation freedom, Chris. There can only be
Oh,
a
right.
project freedom.
Of course, because if it's an operation, then all right, then the
Right,
clock never
exactly. So
stops.
this
Yeah.
is no, this is great. This is obviously a bunch of happy horse shit, but when has that ever stopped the Republican Party or Donald Trump?
Well, of course.
Um, yeah, but
So
yeah,
I mean, I think just to be very a little quicker about this. I mean,
indeed. Yeah.
um, we've got this situation here where a trickle of ships have gotten through. You're still
Yes.
trying to dupe Congress. And
Hmm.
of course, it doesn't really matter if you dupe Congress or not. As long as Republicans have any power, they're just going to sit in their hands and watch. Um,
Absolutely.
but is that the only reason why is there anything else that's affecting how this project is working?
Well, there absolutely is, Chris, and it's really funny you should ask that.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, I'm sorry, Project Freedom.
Careful.
Uh, yeah, it's already over. It's already ended. It's already stopped. It's
Yeah.
done. Yeah, Trump called it off after like 2, 3 days. Did he do this because the Strait of Hormuz is now open again, you guys? Absolutely not. How silly
Ooh,
of you to even ask.
sure.
No, instead, what's gone on here basically is this. A, it wasn't working very well. B, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia told him to knock it off.
Wait. Let's back up there. You're telling me that a
Yeah,
foreign government told the
yeah,
United States to
yeah.
stop doing what it's doing?
Yeah, basically, this is one of the problems with doing foreign policy by truth, Chris, is that if you just sort of like announce shit on social media, but you don't, talk to your allies and
Oof,
coordinate with them before you do it, your allies tend to get a little bit, spiky, just a tad.
just a touch.
And the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which by all accounts has been very much on board with the idea of no, 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 keep going till victory. Don't declare victory and leave us with an Iranian regime that is now much stronger and more dangerous because, that's not cool, guys. The Saudi regime, nonetheless, apparently really didn't like this whole Project Freedom situation. They
Hmm.
announced to the American government if you do this, you do not get to use the Prince Sultan Air Base. You do not get to
Oh,
use our airspace, which is absolutely necessary for there to be air cover for American ships in the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. So basically, they put the kibosh on it. They just
wow.
sort of vetoed.
And
Apparently, oh yeah, go ahead.
and this is why, we consistently talk about and say how this is America's Suez
Oh yeah,
moment,
yup.
because the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia basically said, "Oh, hey, listen, you want to use our stuff to do your weird shit? That's not, no, we're
Mhm.
not going to do that. Game
Yeah,
over, ball game." And
yeah.
like, and now, and Trump has had to redo his entire plan because Saudi Arabia said no.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Apparently, it's to the point where when Donald Trump heard that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia had said absolutely not, he called the Crown Prince, the guy who actually runs the joint, Mohammed bin Salman, and
Yeah,
he spoke to him directly. And the Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia told him, "Yeah, no, you heard me the first time." So,
wow,
yeah,
wow.
Trump called him to jawbone him to get him to do what he wanted, and the prince said nope.
Art
And
of the
so,
deal.
yeah, and so Donald Trump had to end Project Freedom. It's interesting. You may have heard that Italy had a similar situation. The prime minister there, Meloni, basically refused to give the United States access to, I think, its ports and its air bases because, number one, there's not a defensive war here, which is what NATO is set up for. And number two, America didn't even bother to ask and follow the law because Italy actually has laws and shit.
Yeah,
So yeah, Trump got really pissed off at Italy, got super pissed off at Spain for the same reason. You have heard not a single word against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia from Donald Trump.
that's right.
Yeah, which I think tells you a hell of a lot about who Donald Trump is, what he values, and just how incredibly shaming this is that he declared, oh no, there's huge movements on the peace talks and this is all moving forward, and any minute now it's all going to be fine, and we're stopping Project Freedom. You guys, it's all cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just, I mean, the problem is, we keep on saying we have to sit, watch, and wait, but, every day it gets worse.
Hmm.
Every day, fuel stockpiles continue to go down,
Yep.
prices go up.
Yep.
Summer's coming, so at least some of the people around the world won't need heat, as much heat as they
Yeah,
needed
but
before.
they're people are going to need air conditioning, and a lot
Heat,
of electricity is
that's right.
generated through, yeah, through gas turbines and through oil. So, and this is to say nothing of the problems with fertilizer. This is to
Yeah,
say nothing of the problems with heliums. Like
yeah.
this is the longer this goes on, the worse it's going to get. And I don't think the Republicans have fully brought on board what this means and how bad this could be for them,
Well,
because it's going to take months to get things back to normal, if they ever get back to normal.
are they even allowed to talk about it? I mean,
Yeah.
because I mean, as we'll talk about in the next section, they're still
Hmm.
sycophants and they're still scared of Trump and they're still, I think, until November,
Yeah.
until the writing has actually been put onto the wall, they're going to
Hmm.
pretend like there's still a chance. But on
Yeah.
that, I think we should take our last break
All right.
and then we'll talk about the US and then try to get this thing in under 3 hours.
Sounds good to me.
Ooh, all right. All right. Well, we will be right back. And we're back. So, um, let's talk about the United States of
Mhm.
America because I mean, you really can't not talk about the
Yep.
U.S. in these times.
Yep.
We know when we started this podcast, we actually we were gonna try and like do one on, one off, but
We had dreams, Chris.
we
We had
had
dreams and
plans.
plans.
We had
Yeah.
plans, and
Hmm.
then like Mike
Hmm.
Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they're punched in the face.
I
So
mean, I've never heard that quote more appositely used. So
yeah.
yeah.
So I think that we need to talk about, and there's so much to talk about, but I think the main thing to discuss this week is the result of the Supreme Court decision from last week, which was
Hmm.
to gut portions of the Voters' Rights Act, and almost
Yep.
instantly, all the states that we can call, confidently
Hmm.
the Confederacy,
Yep.
decided that we need to undo the things that helped minorities because we definitely didn't want to do them in the first place. And now we need to
Hmm.
reinstill the spirit of the Confederacy and ensure
Yep.
that only the right people are allowed to vote. We would
Yep.
never be racist, but we will
No.
ensure that the right People are allowed to vote. Patrick, could you illuminate us, please?
Yeah. So basically, the whole point of the Voting Rights Act in its current iteration, the one that came out in 1982, was to deal with a Supreme Court ruling that was egregious at the time that said that in order to find that a particular gerrymandering was a racial gerrymander intended to prevent Black Americans in the South from being able to exercise their rights and elect the politicians of their choice to office, right? To have a say in how things are run. You had to show that the people doing the gerrymandering intended to do racial gerrymandering. And that's basically impossible because the only evidence you can have for intent for that kind of thing is someone literally writing down on a piece of paper, I am a racist and that's why I'm drawing the lines this way. Which, shockingly, is not a thing that racists who draw racial gerrymanders tend to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Congress, and it was passed with overwhelming majorities. And again, under Ronald Reagan, who was not known as being a racial liberal, Chris,
Yeah.
I will
No.
have you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so this, the Republican Party at that time voted in large numbers along with the Democratic Party to say that no, the real test is, does this create a racial gerrymander, whether or not you're intending to do it, if the effect of it is to prevent Black Americans from being able to elect people. That's the trigger. That's what says no, that's unconstitutional and it's wrong. When the Supreme Court in Calais v. Louisiana took a look at this rule, they did not say that the Voting Rights Act was unconstitutional, Chris.
Right.
What they did do, however, was to say that if you read the statute properly, what it really means is that you need to find intent to racially gerrymander, which is, you will notice, literally not what the law says, also the exact thing the law was intended to get rid of. Basically, they ruled that it was unconstitutional, but they were fucking cowards and refused to actually do it.
Yeah.
So instead, they just sort of decided, no, we're just going to read the law differently. So it means the opposite of what it says. It's great, you guys. It's going to be fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
Because America's moved on. America has moved on. The South has made such great progress. And the court has decided that it determines what the law should be and what the reality really is. And none of it has to do with anything written by the framers or by Congress. They can just sort of make shit up. It's fine.
Yeah.
So, shockingly enough, immediately afterwards, as you pointed out, state after state in the South that is controlled by the Republican Party has decided to redo its districts. And this is when primary elections are already in swing. So there's actually elections going on that are being stopped.
Yeah.
And they're talking about rerunning the primaries with these whole new districts. In Louisiana, which is 1/3 Black, 2/3 white, and has had 1/3 of its representatives be African American and from the Democratic Party, and 2/3 of its representatives be white and from the Republican Party. They're now going to draw new districts where they expect to win either 5 Republican seats to 1 Democratic seat held by an African American, or maybe just go whole hog and have 6 white majority seats so that Black people have no representatives whatsoever, despite making up 1/3 of the population.
Well, just on that one very quickly. It's they're talking about making the white majority districts. And a lot of people are also saying that, we want fair districts. And I see this from, my Facebook my Facebook fascists. And they're like, we were finally going to get fair districts and we're finally going to get a proper representation. I'm like, you talk about 1 district out of 5 or 1 district out of 6. So it's not like it's not like you were being overrun by, minority majority districts.
Chris, as far as the Republican Party is concerned, if there's a single Black man elected in the South, that is one too many. Now, I know that's an inflammatory fucking statement. And I know I've gone my entire life. I'm 46, almost 47 years old, right? And I've gone my entire life being told by many other people and convincing myself that this cannot be that the Republican Party is a white supremacist party. It's just a party with white supremacists in it.
Yeah.
But now, no, in Mississippi, they're also talking about getting rid of all African American seats from Mississippi. Again, large African American minority inside of Mississippi, but they're just going to stop any Black people from getting elected. They are currently meeting in the old Capitol House, the Jim Crow Capitol House. So that's fun. While they're talking about stripping away the ability for Black people in the South to elect anybody.
Yeah.
This is
Oops,
unconstitutional.
sorry.
It is anti-democratic. It is white supremacist. It is nothing but. And the upside of all of this is that if the Republicans can pull off what they're trying to pull off here, then they could basically rig the election so that they get an extra 15 to 19 seats in the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
Which would mean that in order for the Democrats to have a hope of actually forming a majority, it would not be enough for them to win a majority of the votes. They'd have to win a supermajority of the vote just to get a bare majority in the House. So it's I mean, what can you say other than the Supreme Court, in its corruption, has reinstituted Jim Crow? This is it's a fucking scandal. This puts John Roberts, and I will say his name in particular. John Roberts is one of the worst Supreme Court chiefs that we have ever seen. He's up there with Roger Taney. His legacy will have been the reintroduction of white supremacy to the South in the United States. He is a scandal, and I hope people never stop spitting when they hear his name going forward.
If it's still legal at the end of this. I mean, I mean, it's a very
Yeah,
good point because you're talking about basically trying to create a situation where there's only one party
yeah,
ever, and that's weird
yeah.
because we just spent time talking about how the S&P, have won, for the past almost 20 years. But there's a
Mm,
difference because first off, the system is designed to prevent that very thing from happening, and second,
mm.
the S&P didn't get to create their own districts to vote in to
Right.
ensure that their maintenance that they maintain their place on in their constituencies. They had to
Hmm.
consistently win their
Yeah.
constituencies, and and keep some kind of general level of competence.
Hmm.
Whereas the Republicans now, it's really interesting because we haven't talked about Virginia yet, but basically today, I believe it was today or yesterday, the Virginia State Supreme Court shot down the redistricting referendum result
Yeah.
in Virginia to ensure that Virginia remains a state
Hmm.
with high Republican vote counts. I forget exactly how it's supposed to
Yeah.
work, but basically it's
So yeah.
benefited the Republicans as well in Virginia.
Oh yeah. Because what's going on here, Chris, is that one side, when it well, I'm not going to do the whole one side, the other side thing. I'm going to say it. The Democratic Party, when it runs states, generally tends to do good government initiatives like putting forward, amendments to the Constitution that say, and there'll be no political gerrymandering. Republicans, when they control states, politically gerrymander immediately. Wisconsin is probably the most egregious example where they were able to gerrymander themselves a two-thirds majority on the basis of about, I think, 40 something percent of the votes. And not just because that's how the chips fell, but because they deliberately created a situation where, they would have a majority in the state house no matter what the voters said. Um, so this is unfortunate because it means that the Democrats basically spent several decades unilaterally disarming.
Yes,
And now they find themselves in a situation where the Republicans are trying to engineer a one party state. They're
yeah,
attempting to engineer themselves a majority without needing the support of the voters anymore.
correct.
Basically, usurping the place of the people in the American Constitution and replacing it with a party,
Yeah, no,
which to my mind is akin to treason, at least in the sense of, you know, lese majesté, right? Like you're attempting to replace the sovereign with yourself,
correct. Yeah,
and I'm not a fan of that kind of thing, as you can imagine.
I
So
assume not.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
the Democrats are attempting finally to fight back on this. And yeah, and now the Supreme Court in Virginia, which is, to my understanding, conservative, we'll put it that
yes.
way,
Ooh,
has
conservative. Yes,
basically decided that the Supreme Court may say that, political gerrymandering is every state's right to gerrymander politically on a partisan basis to their heart's content, but they will not allow it to happen in Virginia if it hurts the Republican Party.
because of a technicality. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, it seems like it looked like the Democrats had a chance,
Mhm.
but now these these seats is basically given to Republicans an extra 13 seats or more in
Hmm.
these elections. Now, of course, I will try to instill some kind of hope here. We
Oh
have
yeah.
been talking about dummy manders before,
Yes, and this is. Hmm.
basically where you've gerrymandered a district to make sure that you can't lose, but you keep on forgetting about the people. And
Mm.
and just like in Texas, where it had already been gerrymandered,
Hmm.
now you're looking. I mean, all these people in all these states, they are now the subject of national attention. And
Hmm.
I saw this thing about influencers and how Republicans were using influencers far before Democrats, and
Mm.
the youth don't watch the news, they don't read papers.
Right.
They basically watch some person online who's making a cake and then also says, you know what I love about cake, the
Mm.
estate tax. And you're just like, wait, what? And yet these people, they're there to influence people into voting a certain way.
Yep.
So this issue is going to be beamed into people's minds over the next 6 months or so, and
Oh
so
yeah.
it could raise turnout because America has notoriously low turnout. And
Yes.
because what's the point? Because if I'm going to turn out, I'm not going to win. But this is
There's
like the
not a
one
dime's worth of difference between the parties.
oh
Eh,
yes.
Or actually, it turns out there really is. Oh my
Oh yeah,
God.
yeah.
Yeah.
One party wants to rule forever, and one party wants you to have a say in ruling. And the
Yeah.
party that wants to rule forever is the party that just created this system.
Yep.
I think that we could, unless you have anything else to say, we should probably leave it there.
I will simply point out that even with all of this, even with the rigging, even with the corruption, even with the gerrymandering, I think what's coming in November is going to be so bad for the Republican Party that I still don't think they're going to keep the House. Like, unless Donald Trump suddenly opens, ends the war in Iran and, does something really popular and
Stick $7,000 in every American's pocket.
right, exactly. And, unless he all of a sudden stops being Donald Trump, which strikes me as unlikely at this stage in his life. I think the Republicans are probably going to lose the House. I think they are more likely than not to lose the Senate as well. And I think there's going to be a lot of regret amongst Republican politicians and amongst Republican voters when they wake up after the election in November and realize that, having become the party of white supremacy and then losing power over it is not a good look,
It's not it's not really a win.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean there's still things the Democrats are still trying to fight back. They're still trying to figure out how to compensate for this now extreme
Hmm.
gerrymandering. And I imagine there's going to be a lot of court cases if these primaries are halted, stopped, restarted,
Yep.
about who gets to stand, who's supposed to stand. So I guess for now we'll just wait and we'll see until we get to November whether or not we're ever going back to America,
Yep.
or do we stay on the other side of the pond for as long as we're not being ruled by Farage. It's a wonderful
Yeah.
time to be a liberal. Um, I think that we should end with some good news.
Yeah. We should end with some good news. Have you got
Uh,
any good news, Chris?
well, I kind of do. I listen.
Yeah.
Like this is the political science side of it.
All right, go
As
on.
we end today, I think it's really important that we talk about what's happened here in the UK just a little bit
Hmm.
in the abstract. When I moved here, there were two parties, right?
Hmm.
I was in one of the what you would consider a fringe party.
Yep.
Just a few seats in parliament. They were running the Holyrood, or they were the minority, the opposition in Holyrood. But I mean, come
Hmm.
on, they didn't know. It doesn't matter unless you're big down here.
Hmm.
In the intervening now 17 years, the S&P have grown massively, and even though we don't have as many seats as we had before, what's happened in Scotland is huge. But also the complete diversification of how parties have now shifted in the UK is, I think
Hmm.
that we're looking, if we're able to get some kind of left wing alliance, then
Hmm.
you're probably looking at a proper political sea change in the UK. Now, obviously, you have to defeat reform, you have to defeat that, but you're
Hmm.
seeing a real sea change, and if people get behind the right side of that change, which is
Hmm.
not the fascist side. Um,
Yes,
we,
please. Yeah.
you could see, there's opportunities for smiling.
Yeah.
Whether it be,
Things can change and things
things
do
can
change.
change and we don't have
Yeah.
to sit in constant fear of, concentration camps, which is literally a reform policy.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's some good things to see in the local elections, and proportional representation in Wales. That's a huge. Maybe I hope it spreads to the whole of the UK.
Yeah.
That's my good news.
Yeah. Um, on a very similar note, I came in third in a pub quiz.
What?
Yeah. So there you go. There's hope. There's hope for everyone. If I can get onto the podium position at my local pub quiz, then who knows what we can do together. That's how I'll leave us today.
And that is the inspirational note of the week.
Yeah.
And as always, I'm Dr. Silverstein.
I'm Dr. Armshaw.
And we are doctors.
Not doctors.
Good night.